Chapter 6 Path to Somewhere. Like his grandfather before him, William sets out to explore what new adventures and opportunities life has to offer. As he walks south along an old cart path, a gust of wind tosses his wavy long brown hair about his face. In all the commotion, he had forgotten to grab his old tricorn from the rack when leaving his uncle's. Regretting his absent-mindedness, he stops and quickly pulls his hair into a ponytail before continuing onward. William trusts his country boy upbringing, and having been raised by a couple of savvy old Irishmen, he learned early on the fine art of common-sense thinking. So although long overdue, he knows his decision to venture out on his own is the right move. Moreover, he is a keenly skilled hunter, outdoorsman, and journeyman carpenter, confident in his abilities. So despite having not a single clue as to where he is going, his eyes ooze with confidence as he marches along. Invigorated, he is resolved to follow an unknown path and blaze a trail of his choosing, wherever it leads. William first traveled through Philadelphia on his way to Newton Square in 1723, and since then, as a result of Captains Hunter and Wayne promoting James Jr.'s tailoring skills, he has made numerous trips to the big city on behalf of his uncle, traveling there weekly to pick up materials and/or deliver garments. That said, although he has no clue where he is going, after nearly 300 trips to Philly, he knows the city of brotherly love is not on his list. If nothing else, his trips there convinced him early on it is no place for an Irish-born farm boy. And although Boston was mesmerizing, nothing about it inspired him to want to be there either. He had heard about New York, but it just sounded like another Boston or Philly. Perhaps New Jersey. He had heard about the wilderness there. So, for now, he will just keep heading in that direction, taking the southern route to the Delaware River to avoid Philadelphia. Cart path to the Delaware River, Pennsylvania Colony. Later that evening, fall 1728. Walk and think, chat with the occasional passer-by, walk and think some more. Stop and look. Gaze in wonder and dream about what lies ahead. Continue onward, walking and thinking some more. For the past 9 hours, that is exactly what William has been doing. What a wondrous place, this America! Its bounty of beauty surrounding him for as far as the eye can see. But still, he thinks, nothing compared to Ireland. If he can find a place as beautiful as that, he will have found a place he can call home. For now, however, the evening air is turning chilly, and he needs to find a spot to bed down. What he needs is a nice warm fire and a makeshift bed out of the wind. Flipping the collar up on his coat, he continues walking. While searching for a good spot, he comes upon a dike. After following it a short distance, he comes upon a massive fallen tree surrounded by shrubs and bushes, perfect for sheltering from the frigid wind. With a warm fire blazing and his makeshift bed of evergreens crafted, he wraps himself in his coat and blanket and lays back on the log. Chewing a scone, the warmth of the fire washes over him. He reflects on his day, pondering what he has seen and wondering about where he will be tomorrow. It has been a long day. He is exhilarated but tired. Even still, life has taught him to be cautious, so on this night he sleeps with one eye open. West end of Broad Dyke, outskirts of Newcastle, Delaware Colony, the following morning, late fall 1728. At the crack of dawn, William rolls over to the sound of birds playing along the edge of the water. As he rolls to his butt watching, he is reminded of one of Senior's stories. And while the memory warms his heart, it does nothing to shake the chill from the damp morning air. Reaching over the coals, he feels for hot embers. Finding a hot spot, he pulls some dry grass from his pocket and grabs a handful of twigs, stoking the fire. Warming his hands, he watches as the first rays of light appear. Like God revealing his next destination, the outline of a small town appears through the fog in the distance. Nicely warmed, he finishes his scone and rises to his feet. With his belongings packed, he throws his bedroll across his back and sets off along the dike. When he reaches the edge of town, he is greeted by a sign that reads, Newcastle, Delaware. Originally a Dutch settlement, Newcastle was settled in 1651 under the name Fort Casimir. Broad Dyke, which William slept beside, was built by the Dutch 4 years later. Around that same time frame, the settlement was seized by the Swedish and renamed Fort Trinity. Later still, after the Second Anglo-Dutch War, the English took over, and under the leadership of Quaker William Penn, it became the center of government in Pennsylvania and was renamed Newcastle. However, the Swedish, Dutch, and English residents grew tired of the overly conservative Quakers and elected to break away from the colony. And in 1704, it becomes Newcastle, Delaware. Soon after, Newcastle becomes the county seat, and with its affluent population of judges, lawyers, and politicians, the local economy thrives. Slowly making his way along the charming streets of Newcastle, William comes upon a well-to-do couple and what appears to be their young son. The man appears studious and not very handsome. He is dressed like a clergyman or lawyer in a fine brown suit, shiny black shoes, and an expensive beaver-skin tricorn. He is with an equally dressed, masculine-looking woman. They are standing in front of a beautiful 2-story home with a damaged white picket fence, quarreling. Their conversation grows louder as William draws closer. The woman is pointing resolutely at her damaged fence, arguing her case. At the same time, the man seems put off by the subject. William slows his pace so as not to intrude, but their conversation is so loud anyone within earshot can hear them. "Why not hire the Dutchman, Mr. Hollifield?" she argues. Sternly, the man replies, "Because he charges far too much. No, I'll not do it." "But," tempering his frustration, the man says calmly, "Martha, I said I'll investigate hiring someone, but right now I haven't the time." His wife glares at him sternly. Responding to her scowl, he leans closer and says, "I'll address it when I have time, and right now I have none. I'm already late." The woman is clearly unhappy with his response, but bites her lip. Something about this encounter speaks to William. Seizing the moment, he approaches, politely interrupting, "Pardon me, kind sir." The man turns to him with a scowl, irritated by the intrusion. What he finds, however, is William's disarming smile beaming back at him. Throwing him further off guard, William says, "Please forgive the interruption, but I couldn't help but overhear. Sir, if you're in need of a craftsman to mend your fence, I would be delighted to oblige you." The man is staring at William wide-eyed with his mouth open as he continues, "Believe what I say. I'm most capable and well-versed with such things. Furthermore, I would be willing to do so for nothing more than a fair wage or a hot meal." Frustrated, the man hastily dismisses William with a wave and walks away in disgust, leaving William and his family standing there speechless. Shrugging it off, William smiles at the woman and continues onward. After just a few steps, the woman calls to him, "Excuse me, young man, might we have a word?" William stops and turns to her. "Please forgive my husband. He's not normally so rude, and not to excuse his behavior, but he is a very busy man." "No to worry, milady. I'm sure he meant no harm." "Is it true what you said? Can you really repair my fence?" As his charming grin grows into a smile, he says, "I most certainly can, milady. I grew up on a farm in Ireland where we had to do all the fixing ourselves." The woman takes a step in his direction. "I see. So, you're from Ireland? Might I ask your name?" Straightening himself, he gives her a polite bow and replies, "William, milady." "William? That's a fine name. William what?" "Albin, milady. William Bruce Albin." "Well, William, I have other tasks that require attention as well. Do you believe yourself capable of other repairs and projects other than my fence?" "Yes, milady. I can fix pretty much anything needs fixing. For a fair wage, of course." The woman's smile broadens, and with a twinkle in her eye, she says, "Well then, William, if you're still interested in undertaking these tasks, I would very much like to hire you. When can you begin?" With a raise of his eyebrows, he replies, "Straight away, if it pleases you." "It would please me very much. And you need not worry about being paid. I am a godly woman of means, and I assure you, you will be well compensated. Furthermore, if you prove yourself to be of a clean mind, and as capable as you say, I have much that requires your attention before winter. What say you?" With a giddy smile, he nods. "I would appreciate the opportunity, milady." Waving her hands, she chuckles. "Oh, my goodness, young man. If you're to be in my employ, we must come to an understanding. My name is not milady. It is Martha Thomas Davies. So, from this moment hence, you can refer to me as Mrs. Davies." Looking down at her son holding her hand, she adds, "And this is my son Samuel." William nods. "Understood, Mrs. Davies." Then he walks over and kneels to shake the little boy's hand. "Hello, Samuel." Looking up at his mother, he asks, "How many years is he?" With a warm, proud smile, she says, "God bless us with this fine young man just 5 years ago." "He's a handsome lad. He looks like his da, but clearly he gets his good looks from his mother." Martha smiles and covers her mouth bashfully. "Speaking of my husband, you needn't worry about him. He'll be fine once he sees the work is done, and he no longer needs to bother with it." William nods. "So, shall we get you started?" "Indeed. Please, lead the way," William says, extending an arm towards her house. Guiding Samuel by the hand, Mrs. Davies shows her new handyman what needs to be repaired, then points him towards her husband's tools and materials in a large barn-like shed behind the house. "Any questions?" "No, ma'am. No, Mrs. Davies." "Very well. If you find yourself in need of anything further, I'll be in the house with Samuel. Come around to the back door and knock if you need me." "Aye, Mrs. Davies." Having seen the damaged fence, William gathers the tools and materials necessary for making the repairs and gets to work. It is bitterly cold, but it only serves to remind William of his days working on the family farm, which in a strange way makes repairing the fence enjoyable. After repairing the Davies fence, he wastes no daylight, quickly tending to other projects around the property. Upon Mr. Davies' return later that evening, the first thing he spies is the finely mended fence, the sight of which brings him to an abrupt halt. Stepping closer, he closely examines the work. To his surprise, the repair is flawless, clearly not the work of the Dutchman. Puzzled, he inquires about it the moment he walks through the door. "Martha, what have you done?" Placing her fingers gently over his lips, Martha hushes him, prompting a look of confused obedience. Not one to question his wife, he lets her escort him out the door and around the property. From one project to the next, she shows off all the fine work William performed that day. Taking his astonished expression as a sign of approval, she leads him around to the shed. "But Martha, Who did you hire to perform the work? It clearly wasn't the Dutchman. Marching towards the shed without so much as a glance in his direction, she breathes, Patience, dear. As they enter the large shed, she interrupts her handyman cleaning and stowing the tools. Excuse me, William. A moment, please. Wiping his hands on his trousers, he turns to her and replies, Most certainly, Mrs. Davies. When he sees her husband, he freezes. Husband, allow me to introduce our new handyman, William Bruce Alban. He came all the way here from Ireland. William, this is my husband, Mr. David Davies, whom you met ever so briefly this morning. To William's surprise, Mr. Davies smiles warmly and, being the godly Welshman he is, extends a hand. It's a pleasure to meet you, William. Shaking his hand, William replies, "'Tis a pleasure to make your acquaintance, sir. My wife has shown me your fine craftsmanship, I must say. Well done, William." "Thank you, sir. I'm happy it pleases you." "It pleases me a great deal, in fact." "Well, again, sir, I'm happy that you're happy." Looking to break down any barriers he may have thrown up that morning, Mr. Davies says, Sir seems a bit formal to me. You can just call me Mr. Davies." William nods. "Aye, Mr. Davies. Your craftsmanship is quite impressive." "Thank you. That's kind of you to say." "So, my wife tells me you're from Ireland. That's a long way to travel to repair a man's fence." William chuckles. "I suppose it is." "Tell me then, do you live in these parts?" "No, sir, I don't. I've been living in Marlborough with me family these past 5 years, but now I'm out seeking me own way." "Outstanding. Well, perhaps I could interest you in staying on here for a spell. There's much to be done, and frankly, I haven't the time nor the skills to bother with it. I'll pay a fair wage, you'd be well fed, and you can sleep in the storage room at the back of our house. It's just off the kitchen, so it stays nice and warm in there. What say you?" he asks, extending a hand. William grins at Mrs. Davies, then reaches out and shakes her husband's hand, saying, "It would be an honor, sir. Mr. Davies." Delighted, Mr. Davies cheers. "Excellent! Then allow me to show you where you can get cleaned up for supper. We can discuss what needs to be done tomorrow while we fill our bellies." That evening, William and the Davies enjoy a fine supper of roast chicken, carrots, and potatoes, during which they discuss the many projects that need to be addressed around the property, prioritizing which one he should begin work on the following day. That night, William beds down in the Davies storage room with a full belly. Heat from the kitchen's walk-in fireplace keeping him warm and cozy, reminding him of Bailey House. Snuggling on the floor with his wool blanket and coat for a pillow, he soundly slumbers until the rooster crows. As he washes his face in the kitchen, he hears the Davies shuffling about upstairs, so before they come down, he throws on his coat and scurries through the chilly morning fog to the outhouse. A short while later, he is chopping firewood out near the shed when he catches a hint of porridge and fried eggs lofting from the house. While not particularly a fan of porridge, the aroma of eggs frying in pork fat conjures memories of his mother, warming his heart. Calling from the back porch, Martha hollers, "William, food's on the table! Come and eat while it's hot!" William buries the axe in the chopping block and gives her away. Moments later, he and the Davies are sitting at the table breaking bread. "Well, someone got off to an early start this morning," Mr. Davies comments while sipping his tea. With a Cheshire cat grin, William replies, "Aye, you can take the man off the farm, but you cannot take the farm out of the man. I'll bet your father taught you that." "Actually, me granddad taught the both of us," Martha comments. "He sounds like a fine man." "Thank you, Mrs. Davies. He were indeed." Awkwardly, Mr. Davies asks, Was? "He passed away a few years back." Placing his teacup on the saucer, Mr. Davies sighs. It saddens me to hear that, William. I'm sorry for your loss. I remember how difficult it was when I lost my grandfather. It's all right, Mr. Davies. He ain't gone. I carry him everywhere I go, William says, hand over heart. With a warm smile and nod, Mr. Davies remarks, "And it's clear to me that you do." Martha sighs. "You must miss him terribly." William nods with puppy dog eyes. "Just as I miss my grandfather. They're the men who made us who we are they not?" Mr. Davies says, lifting his cup. Smiling warmly, William lifts his cup, tapping it to his employers, replying, "Aye, indeed they are. Well, I hate to break up our fellowship, but I really must be going. There are matters of foremost importance awaiting my attention," Mr. Davies says, gently kissing his wife on the forehead. For the next 3 months, the Davies keep their Irish handyman busier than a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. Even still, every morning he is the first to rise and the first out the door. When he hears those upstairs boards breaking the morning silence, he knows it's time to get out the door before the Davies' feet hit the stairs. That said, after the first couple of days, Mrs. Davies starts leaving bread with butter and/or cheese on the table for him to eat before starting work. In return, William ensures Mrs. Davies is greeted each morning with a freshly stoked fire, a warm kitchen, and a hot kettle of water. Some mornings, due to Mr. Davies' hectic schedule, William finds notes left on the kitchen table beside the cheese and bread, the notes often expressing praise for the work completed, followed by his marching orders for that day. After building the Davies their beautiful new smokehouse, they become the envy of their friends and neighbors, prompting the Davies to lend William out to build 5 more smokehouses and 4 meat houses, while regularly performing various other tasks for neighbors as well, many of them being up in age and less capable of performing simple repairs or laborious chores. The fruits of his labor leaving Mr. and Mrs. Davies in very high standing in their social circle. Schedule permitting, at the end of each day, Mr. Davies walks the grounds, he and William discussing and inspecting the day's work. Those walks quickly become the highlight of their day, for through these daily conversations, Mr. Davies gets to know his handyman, taking a liking to him. As the weeks go by, their conversations broaden, transitioning into more personal topics, like William's past and his plans for the future. Hearing his endearing, albeit heartbreaking story, Mr. Davies comes to understand William, why he came to the colonies, and why he is traveling the countryside alone. As an educated and well-informed member of society, Mr. Davies' knowledge of the goings-on around the colonies is vast. Knowing William's story and his burning desire to find himself will preclude him from staying in Newcastle, Mr. Davies, at the very least, wants to point him in the right direction. Walking the grounds one evening while enjoying what has become a daily tradition, Mr. Davies shares his insight. "I'm hearing rumblings." "About?" With his hands behind his back as he walks, Mr. Davies says, "Of late, there's much talk of Virginia." "Virginia?" "Correct. Word is, the Crown will soon be making land available there. And where there is land being settled, there are opportunities to be had, especially for a young man with skills such as yours." "Is that so?" William says, pondering his words. "I'm telling you, son. Fertile land and endless opportunities." "Opportunities? And land?" William mutters under his breath. "As rumor has it. I'm telling you, William, a capable young man such as yourself would be wise to seek his future there." "That sounds promising, Mr. Davies. But tell me, where is this Virginia?" Stopping, he throws a hand to his chin, squinting. "Fair to say, a good 150 miles or so south of here. I'm told it's a pristine wilderness, beautiful and untouched." With a raise of his brow, William breathes. "A pristine wilderness, you say? That sounds promising." As he continues walking, Mr. Davies snickers. "And truth be told, I've run plumb out of things for you to do around here. Stopping again, he turns to William and professes, "You've done your family proud, son. I really must tell you, Mrs. Davies is most pleased with all you've achieved here, and frankly, so am I." "Thank you, Mr. Davies. I'm truly grateful for the opportunity you've afforded me." Smiling like a proud papa, he replies, "You are more than welcome, William, more than welcome." Looking him in the eyes, he says, "Truth be told, if I thought I could talk you into staying, I would, but I'm of the mind I'd be wasting my time and yours. No, William, this land needs capable young men like yourself to blaze new trails and create new opportunities for themselves and others. This is how we strengthen and grow our communities. Trust me, William, Virginia is where you want to be." William thinks on it, but only for a moment, and then with a firm handshake and confident smile he declares, "Then Virginia it be." Mr. Davies nods. "Virginia, indeed." With that, Mr. Davies gives William a couple of hearty pats on the back, and they proceed into the house for supper. William stays on for a few more days to wrap up the last of his projects, but alas, his time with the Davies comes to an end. With the winter now behind him, and early spring in the air, the time for him to spread his wings and fly is once again upon him. On the morning of his final day, he is handsomely paid along with a small bonus and an affirming wink from his mentor. Then, with the rooster crowing in the background, the Davies see off their Irish handyman with a few encouraging words. With a tearful hug, Mrs. Davies whispers, "Take care of yourself, and we'll keep you in our prayers." Stepping away, he says with a wry grin, "Thank you, my lady." They exchange a warm smile and share a giggle. Then William turns to her husband, the man who in their brief time together has served as his mentor. The two men slap their hands together in a firm, manly handshake, and Mr. Davies says, "Well, son, I will say this. I'm genuinely sorry for being so dismissive of you on that faithful morn so many months ago. Fortunately, my wife had the good sense to see past my foolishness, and for that I am truly grateful." The three of them break into a somber laugh. Then, in a fatherly voice, Mr. Davies adds, "It has truly been a pleasure having you with us, William. I will miss our evening walks." "As will I. The pleasure was mine, Mr. Davies." Placing a hand on William's shoulder, he says, "William Bruce Alban, you have proven yourself a worthy and capable young man. I don't know where you'll end up, but wherever it is, you'll be fine." Handing him a folded sheet of paper, he adds, "Should you ever be in need of anything, you can reach us here." William tucks it into his pocket, patting it twice. "Thank you, Mr. Davies. I can't thank you enough." "Just keep your faith in God, and remember what I said. Virginia is where your future lies." Bedroll across his back, William gives him a two-fingered salute and says, "Trust me, Mr. Davies, I will." Ironically, the Davies waved their final goodbyes from the very spot where they and William first met.